Hey, welcome to the Go Find Nervous Show. I'm your host, Jake Bolig. We got a new format out there for everybody. So check out this new format we're going to go with. We're going to go with 3 unique examples of how our guests found nervous. And then I'm going to ask them what they're doing now to find nervous. So before we get started, before I introduce the guest, I have a special treat today. I got some mala beads today. Wait for it. I got some Palo Santo out there. If anybody that doesn't know what Palo Santo is, look it up. I got some Palo Santo because today's guest is the beautiful one and only Britt Johnson. Let me tell you about it real quick. Before you do anything, people listening, go follow Venus Rising on Instagram, Venus_Rising. And there's a lot of fakes out there because people want to be like her. So look for her and look for her stories. I think she does a lot of stories. So is that right, Britt?
Absolutely.
Cool.
There's a lot of fake ones.
Welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
I'm really stoked.
What do you do for everybody out there? You do so many things. How would you describe what you do?
I do so many things, so many magical things. Evolutionary astrology,
okay,
which is psychology and metaphysics sort of combined. And of course, astrology is the study of cycles. I work mainly with women. So women's wellness, I call it integrative wellness because we use somatic techniques such as breath work, sound, and I also sit with people for plant medicine as well.
That plant medicine stuff is interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I mainly work with an herb called Damiana and Hape, also known in some cultures called Rape. And it's a ceremonial snuff that you blow into your nose, and then psilocybin mushrooms.
This is crazy. I would love to talk about all that. And if anybody's interested, obviously go follow you. Now the show's about finding nervous. So you've been on a journey. I imagine somebody doesn't just wake up and then get into all that stuff you just mentioned. What are some of the things along your journey that a lot of people that you have a big following? I follow you. I think you're amazing. You're one of the most amazing people I know. And for people listening, you have such an unconventional way of thinking. It's so refreshing in this world of conditioning. So I love what you're doing, first of all. But along that journey, what has made you nervous along the way that you had to overcome that maybe people don't know about?
Yeah, I did not start this in this way at all. And I should also throw cacao in there because I sit with cacao medicine, which is a heart opener, raw chocolate. I started this journey in 2011, 2012. And my first moment of Go Find Nervous was to leave a 13-year-long relationship I had been in since I was 15. So I was one of those in high school, got super enmeshed in a boy/man. Yeah. And I had to leave that. I had to know that taking my son, who was 5 at the time, moving into a brand new space by myself, knowing that I could do this, everything was going to work out. Mm-hmm. I drew on a piece of paper, a house, how much, rent it would be, how many rooms it was. And we were driving around one day, my mom and I, and we found it. And the landlord let me sign the lease that day. So I really know now how we create our reality. Mm-hmm. So that was the first one, and I grew up in that relationship and it was non-conducive to my path. I wasn't going to be able to spread my wings, Mm-hmm. And I knew that on a very deep level. So that leaving codependent relationships for me in this life was the most go find you're fucking nervous that I could ever experience. So that's one.
13 years. So you were 28, give or take, when you decided to leave that?
27.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that can familiarize or are familiar with that situation where they're in something their gut says like, oh man, this is not the thing for me. What was the first action for you? Was it making the decision? Or did you just write on the piece of paper, this is a house, I need to move, and then you just bounced her? Like how'd that go down? Because I'm sure there's people listening like, how does she do that?
Well, we get all the signs all the time when a relationship has ran its course, and I ignored it for a very long time. And then it started to get really, really wildly blatant. And I believe in the manifestation of our illnesses as a part of a healing phase the body's showing us. I study something called German New Medicine and metaphysical anatomy as well. So I got thyroid cancer. And so that to me was use your voice, that was my boom, wake up. So that was really the end point there. And it took me another year and a half to finally just say, I gotta go. But what it felt like was like a part of me that was full of all that fear stepped out. And then a new part of me, this empowered part, looked at, this man in the face and was like, we're done here.
Yeah.
I have to go. I've got shit to do in this life.
Yeah. That's a good way to put. So you think you manifested you just spoke of that illness. You think you manifested that. Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't speak long enough. And everything in the body correlates with a different biological system, according to German New Medicine, which is amazingly fascinating. And if we take ownership and not feel as though we're victims, it's an empowered state. So yeah, it's again, nerve-wracking to think about it that way, but it's better than being, oh, poor me, this is happening to me, I'm going to die. And I knew I was going to be fine. I just had to make some lifestyle changes that were going to be very different.
That's really interesting, because you take that where a lot of people would be like, woe is me, like you just said, but to take those circumstances and be like, all right, how is this working for me? This is telling me something.
Exactly.
I think the majority of people don't do that. When did you start doing that? Was that the catalyst, or was it the German New Medicine? What is it? What is that stuff?
GNM, or German New Medicine.
When did you start taking it like that? Taking the lesson as, hey, this is happening for me. How did you? Because most people don't look at things like that. They say, wait, let me post this on social media so I can get some likes about how I'm having a bad day. Like you were like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to take this and use it. This is working for me. But when did you come up with that stuff?
That was really 2013, which is when that happened in 2011. And then in 2013 is when I made the physical action steps and moves. My biggest nerve-wracking experience. I mean, I even got hives afterwards, which was just an expression of all that anxiety coming through the skin, right? And just that was really uncomfortable. So it was around then. And I also want to add, though, that my mom's been an astrologer my whole life. I've been in the spiritual world realm, but again, a teenager fights against I don't want to do the shit my mom's doing, so, but I had been around it. And right before that, in 2012, I started going to a group meeting every night with women that we just explored all types of intuitive processes, mind body healing. And once a month I would gather. So that really propelled me and gave me courage and strength. And I really think that that's where it's at, is deeper layers and levels of community.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with other people. That's what I'm hearing right there. It's like, get around people that you want to learn from or aspire to be like, or maybe they just give you some confidence or something for whatever reason. Go find the people that you want to be like. All right,
absolutely.
Cool. So what would that be? What would that be your second example of nervous, or what's your second example that you think of?
Well, the second phase of that was I started, okay, what do I want to do and be in service in the world? So I started with intuitive type of sessions, more to do with emotional intelligence, how to tap into things. I realized that people were going to natural path doctors, and I have so many that are friends. I love them so much. A lot of them, though, are taught a lot about eating and diet and supplements. And I had a man come to me, which was not of typical, because I usually would have women. So I started with the website, put myself out there. I just said, fuck it. We're going to see what happens. Terrifying. I remember when the first person came to my house, because I do stuff at my house, and I was like, what am I doing? Right. Am I going to be murdered? So you have to have full trust in the process. And I remember him telling me, I've tried all these things and blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, what is your relationship with your mom and your dad like? Because I've always studied psychology. I've always been deeply, deeply fascinated with Carl Jung and So he said, well, I've been going to a naturopath for years. I said, she never wanted to go and dive into your patterns of like familial, your mom and dad. No, it was just about supplements and eating and diet. And I was like, that's one little fraction of the whole. Right. So that's when I started really thinking about what do I really want to tap into in the somatic practices. And then more and more people showed up.
Well, I love that you were just like, all right, I'm just going to build this site. But you said something that's familiar with anybody that I know that has taken chances is you did the site, you worked up the courage to put it out there. Somebody says, hey, I'm down for whatever you're pitching. And then right before it goes down, a tremendous amount of self-doubt happens, like a tremendous amount of, what am I doing? And that's like the moment where so many people get in their way is the moment that they've wanted to get to is a lot of times where people stop. And
Absolutely.
and it's like, wait, I'm just going to keep going. So you keep going, you power through it. You end up okay. You have a good experience, I'm imagining. You're able to help the guy. So I always say that if you can help somebody, it truly does feel better than money. Like when somebody's like, hey, I really appreciate it. And like, wait, I just changed that person. That's a big thing. So you took that experience, and this was what, 2015, 16, when was this?
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So 2015, 16. So you break through, you start doing this stuff. I know you've written a book, and I need to I'll put that book in the description too, because there's some wild stuff in that book. There's a I tell you, chapter 8 in that book. Is it chapter 8?
I have no idea.
I think there's I'm just gonna say chapter 8 in that book is wild. You're my friend, so it's hard for me to read it. So
it's about the sexuality aspects. Yeah, so it's a poetry book, Stardust and Skin. So it really is like from my birth up until about 3 years ago. But it's about my awakening process, essentially.
Yeah, it's a great read. So I love that. But okay, so one more, you know the rules, 3 instances of nervous. What is the third one that you can think of along your path that maybe people would look at you now and be like, oh, she's so successful. She has this, she has that, but something they don't know that you had to power through that was tremendously painful, maybe, or that was just a big challenge that you really had to power through.
Yeah, I mean, relationships for me with men have always been super deep. I, get in there and really dig in. So along this path, that's been intertwined for my growing, especially with my father wound and how they match with that. But after I started doing one-on-one sessions and opening myself to that, I started doing workshops and retreats. So I opened my house up to do gatherings, mainly with women. And then I would do retreats, and those started 6 years ago.
Okay.
And they would be 2 and 3 night retreats, which I do now as well. They just look very different now. And that was very, very nerve-wracking, which ties into something a little bigger. So, of course, setting the stage up for people, a schedule, the food, the lodging, the environment, keeping it all contained. I've done retreats that went from 8 people to 20 people, so now it just feels like muscle memory to me, and I just love it so much. But putting yourself out there and, putting a link and being like, sign up for this retreat. We don't know each other, but you're going to be in my care for 2 days, And so that was one, but I think the biggest was 3 years ago. And you and I have talked about this so much about what failure really is. And it's just a matter of perception. But one of my biggest things, because I will have an idea that downloads. And like you said, we can't get in our own way of how it's supposed to look. But I was going through in astrology something called my Saturn Return, which happens to everyone about 29, 30 years old.
Okay.
And I decided I wanted to do this like holistic type music festival in Oklahoma City. And long story short, it was successful in the way that it drug me through the mud to do my inner work, especially around my relationship with money, because it is to a relationship. And on the outside, it would have looked like a massive failure financially. And I thought it was that too. I thought my life was over. Like I have fucked up. I lost about 15 grand
Oh my
during that
gosh.
process. So basically,
Which was a ton of money at the, it's like a lot at the time. It's like,
yeah,
oh my God, I don't even, what am I doing?
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I was living a life that awesome credit score, but I was living safe. I wasn't really taking any big risks because even with retreats, it wasn't, there wasn't risk. We weren't really paying out first and being like, okay, we've paid this 2 grand for the space. Now we just have to have faith people showed up.
Right.
We always worked it out with the place first, right?
Yeah.
So I noticed now that it's 3 years later, that was the biggest risk like that I've done when it comes to externally offering something and doing something in an action way. And it was terrifying. Like when I tell you it felt like a metaphorical death, I mean that in my soul.
Yeah.
And it really took me 2 years to see what that meant and how that played out exactly like it needed to. And one of my close friends said, well, what would you do to maybe end lifetimes of patterns when it comes to your worthiness in relationships? Like, how much would that cost you? And then I said, well, apparently 15 grand.
15 grand is a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was so nerve-wracking in the months previous that, like I lost appetite. I couldn't eat. It was like, wake up and remember, oh shit, this thing, is going down and I have no idea if people are going to show up. And essentially it was like one of the biggest parties in the woods with like ginormous stages for, about 75 people.
So just nobody showed up. Like you threw this thing and nobody showed up.
Like, and it was pretty far out of the main city. It was like 2 hours. And, but it just felt like I threw on a $15,000 ginormous party. Yeah. With really beautiful individuals. Yeah. But that's what happened.
But there's so much you could take from that. Like one of the things that I like to do, and it sounds like you're similar, is that I'll attack almost anything if I'll throw down almost anything if I'm going to learn something from it. Like I always equate it like this. I'll throw this money at this. If no matter what happens at the end of it, I'm going to have a good lesson. Like I can level up. If as long as I can level up, I'm all right with throwing down. But with that, I hear so many like level ups. Like one, I need to market a little bit better. Two, there's just like so many in there that you can take from it in retrospect. At the time, you're like, I'm dying. But in retrospect, you're like, wait a second, I could write a book off the lessons from just this.
Absolutely.
So how did you, this is another area. Obviously you have the perseverance, because this is many times that you go through this. So what do you attribute that perseverance to? Because at that moment, there's a lot of people that are like, fuck, I'm going to go get a clerk job and I'm just going to smoke every day and I'm done. Like there's a lot of people that would do that after that kind of a loss. What do you attribute your ability to keep going to?
Well, if I get enough time in between things, it might not have worked out. For that one, it was really big because, again, it was a stage in my life. At the same time, I was ending a relationship. So it felt like death in many areas of my life.
So it's just
it was like just hammering me, which in your Saturn return happens a lot. If we reflect back at 28 to 30 years old, most of us had huge transitions.
Yeah, mine was in Vegas. It's terrible.
Yeah. So I think that for me, I have so much excitement for life and so much ambition to create that if you give me enough time after something didn't work out, maybe like I thought it would, I'll feel refreshed because I'll get different types of downloads and ideas come in. And like with plant medicine, for example, cacao is where I started about 5 years ago. And I've always sat with indigenous or native women that taught me, whether that be cacao or hape and psilocybin. And people don't know that. So talk about another go find nervous. I'm a white woman living in this life, living in Oklahoma in the Midwest. And I go and learn from indigenous women specifically. I did in July in the Dominican Republic, and I learned from them. I learned the ways, I learned the respect, I learned the honoring, and I get the hits all the time of like white privilege and who do you think you are? And, you know, you shouldn't be serving hape and you shouldn't be serving cacao. And, but I know how I learned it and I know my intention.
Sure.
So after one failure, seemed failure, right? So like that event,
Right.
the plant started just falling into my life.
Mm.
And that happened as I got out of my own way. And that re-energized me for new paths. So I think that we have to get out of the mind and the ego to know that that meant probably nothing of what we think that it did.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with mushrooms, there's no way I thought that. I've never been a huge psychedelic person.
Yeah.
You know, so that only happened the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing what comes about, like when you just keep going and you believe in, and I like what you're talking about. You said you give yourself time to get that creativity back, because we're all creative in our own way. If we just give us our time and know what we're supposed to do, it's like, all right, let me dust off, or let me sit at this level for a second. Let me get some food. Let me get some coffee, whatever it is. And then I'm going to try to go back up that mountain, you know, that metaphoric mountain, of course. This is wonderful. So what are you doing now? So that's 3. I mean, we could talk about those for like 5 hours.
Right.
Sure. And people can pick up that conversation with you, go follow you and probably hit you up for that too. But what are you doing now to find nervous? So this is the last component of this show. What are you doing now?
Well, tomorrow morning, I'm going to Puerto Rico to be a part of a retreat, because I always continue my own going into spaces and being led into areas that I have no clue about. So this retreat is not plant medicine involved. It is 6 a.m. wake ups, meditation, chanting, and a really beautiful singer I have followed and listened to for a while, and she's doing a retreat. And I think that 6 a.m. wake ups are my worst nightmare.
Oh, yeah. I know they are.
So I feel like I'm not nervous in that way, but what does make me a little nervous is every time we go through these initiations, like I feel we come back and a lot of our self is shed, and there will be changes. So I know every time I go off, like the last time was when I went to Dominican in July, I will come back seeing my current life in a whole new lens. And then I know I will have to make changes. And then continuously too, you know, I hold retreats. Right now, they've been almost every single month.
Yeah. You've been on the go. You're super busy. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go to different places and different states. I was just in Florida, and we'll do 3 nights of gathering, authentic relating, astrology, dance, movement, singing, plant medicine. And so every time you step into that space, it's familiar souls in a sense. They're always, you know, reflecting something within me, past, present, future. But it is nerve-wracking because people are putting their time, energy, money in your hands.
Yeah. Putting like their faith in you, their trust in you.
Absolutely.
And then I love how you continually level up. I have this saying, like, it just happens to be every year that I have it, but it's more the masculine type saying, is the 2021 version is won't even get into the same club that the 2022 version is going to be. Like, no, you can't get in this club. You're not, because you want to continually go find something new, level up. And that's what I'm hearing. So I love that. I love that lesson. So how else can talk to you forever, but we got to wrap this up here. How can people follow you, or how can people go get involved with what you're doing?
Well, I'm on Instagram, and it is Venus_rising, and then there's an underscore at the bottom. And of course, like you said, there's fake accounts. So make sure that there's continuous stories that are on that particular account, because I share, you know, all my sides, the funniness and all of the weirdness in the story. So if the account doesn't have that, it's not me. And then my website is britt-johnson.com.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. Everybody needs to go follow you. Everybody needs to see what you're doing. No matter what stage of life or spirituality somebody's in, like, you always have something to offer. I always enjoy our conversations, and I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being on the show.
I really appreciate you. Thank you, Jake.
Hey, one last thing before you go, leave a comment which example did you most align with from today's show? I'm curious. I want to know. Also, if there's somebody that you want to find out what's made them nervous, leave their name in the comment. I'll try to get them on the show. Follow me on social media at Jake Bolig. Follow the show at Go Find Nervous. And if you don't mind, subscribe. It helps me out the whole algorithm thing. I appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Go Find Nervous.